thanks a lot for joining me. Thanks, Meital. We have Yael with us. So we're going to be talking about just going back real quickly about why is the classic web analytics fall short when it comes to B2B. I think the way that we look at it traditionally is that as B2B marketers, we've inherited a lot of solutions from our B2C big brothers. And sometimes these solutions fit, but most of the time they don't. But we're still stuck with them. We're still forced to use them. And we wanted to find out really why or what can be done in a better way and achieve better results. So that's kind of the premise and what drove us to think about this topic. So yeah, let's kick it. Introductions. All right. So just for those of you who don't know, Avishai, co-founder and CEO at Trend Demon, website experience optimization for B2B. And just a bit of history, very quickly. When we started Trend Demon, it wasn't actually about the optimization. It was actually about the measurement. It was actually about mapping buyer journeys, helping understand what is happening in the website. And only then did we learn and see that companies are actually looking for a holistic solution that can also optimize and improve outcomes. So that was actually our origin story coming into this, was from the analytics, was from the data. And so this is why in our system we have this main focus on those insights. Elad, tell us about Airfleet.
Cool stuff. So hi everyone, I'm Elad, I'm the CEO at Airfleet. So we basically focus on creating and optimizing what we call revenue generating websites for tech B2B. I mean, the idea of websites, it's very broad idea. So we really are trying to understand how can we get more revenue from website, and we'll get to that when we review the analytics part. But yeah, that's our core focus. We actually have quite a few mutual clients together with Trendymon. So this is how also I got to know Vishai.
Amazing. And I think this really is the foundation when we started to talk about what we wanted to start with is what is the purpose of the website? Even before you go and you talk about how to measure it, it seems pretty obvious, but I think a lot of companies are still missing the mark on this. It is to generate revenue. It is to be a significant part of this go-to-market motion. So a lot of companies may understand that, but they're still failing at connecting it and having the right data to evaluate it. So this is what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I think mostly it's about when we as marketer, when we fail to understand all of the implications of a website within a user journey, within a buyer journey. So this is why we always also struggle a bit with measuring the website, because if we'll get to that, but if we don't define what the website is doing, so it's very hard to measure the impact that it drives.
Right. And every project you do a lot, right, starts with establishing a proper measurement foundation. Otherwise, any work in terms of optimization or generation is really useless, right? Because if we're not able to measure it correctly.
Obviously, I think any project whatsoever doesn't even have to be a website. You need to start with the goal in mind. So what are you trying to achieve? And when we are talking about websites, we are actually talking about how is this specific website contributing to the company. And sometimes the way I break down is there are like three main goals for any B2B website. So it's like lead generation, which everyone is talking about or mostly talking about, but then there are two other hidden parts, which is sales enablement and brand awareness. So this is where we struggle, because when we are talking about lead generation, so we understand, okay, we want the website to generate leads. But when we talk about sales enablement, so what do we actually expect from the website? So you must start with the website goal when you're trying to obviously create a new website or even optimize an existing one, because that's the way to go. Once you define the goal, once you define what are you expecting from the website, then it's much easier to set up everything from there. It's like the plans, the analytics, the optimization plan, and everything else.
Right. And I think because now let's talk a little bit about why it failed. And so I think in other aspects or areas that were originally aimed at a B2B process, think of outreach, right? When you think about email campaigns, right? All the metrics are aligned to that purpose. But when it comes to websites and web analytics, the challenge is we actually got this tool, this free tool, Google Analytics in most parts, right? And they told us, well, you got web analytics. Why, this has the answers that you need. But guess what? Really, it doesn't. And when we try to understand why doesn't it give us the answers that we need, let's talk about some blind spots, right? So some of the blind spots we discussed are that the B2B website or the classic web analytics give us, right? Data, we are looking at traffic or page views or visits, but we're not selling to all our traffic. We're not an e-commerce website. We're not a publisher. We're selling to accounts. We're selling to buying groups. We're selling to different company segments and ICPs. So it's a simple but a very crucial distinction between the type of data that we have. What are the other things in terms of the data that you see are significant in that perspective? Human B2B that you
Yeah,
see.
so I want to go way back in history, but most marketers used to work with Google Universal Analytics, right? And then there was a big crisis when Google deprecated Universal Analytics and moved into GA4. And there was fundamental change, but really what mostly changed for marketers is the base metrics that Google was putting in front of them, right? Because as you mentioned, as marketers, especially in B2B, we don't really care about traffic. Unfortunately, we report about traffic. We report about how many visitors and how many page views, but deep inside, we know that that doesn't do anything. It doesn't really matter. I don't mind if I have 10,000 or 100,000 people visiting my website. What I care about is who are those visitors. Unlike B2C, where most of the people that are visiting your website can potentially convert if you are selling commodities or something like that, in B2B, you need to have those specific accounts, those specific buying groups. And out of the box, Google Analytics doesn't even help you understand who is in front of you. It doesn't even help you to understand what are they doing on your website. So basically, when we are talking about the classic web analytics or what we have now in built in Google Analytics, it's basically useless for
Right.
marketers as is. So if you put the Google Analytics pixel on your website and then you go into the dashboard and you check it, you can't do anything with it. It's basic. It's nice, right? You can report it, but it doesn't really help you to do your job any better. And I think this is where it starts, because once you ask the questions about, okay, what do I need to know in order to do my job better as a marketer, then you start understanding which metrics are you actually supposed to track. And yeah, those are not the number of visitors or the number of page views on your website. It's not even the average engagement rate or the average conversion rate on your website. Those doesn't mean anything for a marketer. It's really hard to use those generic metrics in order to do your job better.
So
Um,
So there are these identification gaps that are inherent. Some is data that just Google doesn't have, right? Account level data that you simply don't get. And another aspect is an integration part, right? That doesn't track the metrics that we actually care about that don't happen on the website. So we have a few challenges and a few gaps, right? A data gap that we have, an integration and basically a way to look at those metrics and those conversions in a better way. And because we don't have those two things, it's very hard for us to build a picture of what is happening and what is working and what we should be doing based on, which is the main or the only purpose of those analytics, right? The whole thing is to help us report on our success and take decision moving forward. And when we spoke about it yesterday, I think one of the things that kind of struck me is really you took segmentation as one of those core things that are fundamentally different. And I think that was a really good distinction between kind of generally looking at traffic and this B2B approach that says really not all visitors are created equal. In fact, they're vastly different. So maybe tell us more about that kind of approach of segmentation.
Yeah, totally. So I think that's where you can see that Google Analytics wasn't built in mind for B2B. It can work great for B2B, but it wasn't built like that. The engineers at Google or the product managers at Google working on Google Analytics didn't think, okay, what would a B2B company need in order to have this tool, to use this tool as a daily basis, right? And you can see it when you check out the demographics, for example. So it's about the age, and it's about the, I don't know, like the location maybe, and it's about like interest and stuff like that. And it's really tailored for commerce. Even when you like it's the measurement of like the value. It's built for web commerce. It's built for transactional website visits, right? They didn't build it for a long-term sales cycle that will take you 6 months, where you need like 5 different people from a buying committee from this specific account that you sell to in order to understand what's going on. And I think that's where segmentation starts, because when I'm thinking segmentation, I'm thinking first, who is in front of me? Who is that? Who is this visitor? It doesn't help me to understand if they are like their gender or their basic demographics. It doesn't mean anything to me. What I really want to understand is, are they qualified to be my buyer, right? Are they within my ICP? Who is that persona in front of me? Is that someone that can be a champion? Is that someone, like if I'm selling to Fortune 500 people, Fortune 500 companies? I don't care about like people in general visiting my website. I really want to understand, okay, who are those people? What are they doing on my website? And when I'm saying what are they doing on my website, I mean like, do they have any intent to buy anything? Are they just visiting my website? So segmentation wise is both in terms of the, I would say, who is in front of me, the visitor. So is it within my ICP? Is it like a targeted account if I'm doing ABM? Who, based on what they're doing on the website, are they even within my personas? And a lot of the time when we report metrics in Google Analytics, even let's take the basic one. If I want to see if people are engaged, and I'm going to take all of my visitors and I'm going to measure, are they engaged? Again, this means nothing, because if I'm going to increase my paid spend, for example, so I'm going to get a lot more people on my website, and some of them might just immediately bounce, some of them will stay, but this I just shifted completely my engagement rate just because I did a spend and a bigger spend on my paid. And on the flip side, think about like you're doing an HR recruitment campaign, right? And suddenly you get all of those job seekers on your website. They are super engaged. They're reading about the company because they saw this and they're looking for a job. So they're engaged. They are checking out all of your website. They are even like submitting the forms. But really, as a
They're not your
marketer,
buyers.
it doesn't mean anything to me. It's not my bias, exactly. So I can report more people are visiting, they are more engaged. It doesn't actually mean anything. So without that, these proper segmentations and reporting on those specific segments, those specific audiences, you can't actually do anything with Google Analytics. And I think this should be the core, like the first thing you do when you finish watching this webinar is make sure that you have your audiences set up correctly in Google Analytics. I think
Yeah,
that's
and
like the,
we'll
the basic
and
thing.
and in terms of takeaways, one of the things that we discussed that we want people to be able to take from this session is really to understand what are the things that they can do today with what they have, right? Without just buying new tech or integrating new stuff. What can they do with the tech they have today to get better results and better insight on what is happening? And at a deeper level, as we kind of progress in maturity, I think marketers need to step up their game to be able to communicate revenue-based metrics with financial leadership in their company, right? They need to have a financial or economic framework to analyze the website so that they can have those discussions with a CFO and explain why do they want to invest more in those channels, in this content, in those technologies. Otherwise, when it's not built, I think this is a lot of the frustration that CFOs have with CMOs or VP marketing. They come and say, "Hey, we need this. We've got more traffic." But then the CFO rightly asks, "Okay, but does that generate the pipeline and the revenue that we need?" So we talked about the problems, and now we want to start diving into kind of what do we recommend, the steps that we recommend taking, the metrics we recommend looking at and gathering. And I think that we want to divide it up into a few, or at least the two main parts. I think the first part is identity. Like that said, who is in front of me? Who am I speaking with when they come to the website? And what can I do even today with the data that I have today to be able to achieve more with what I have? And then the other question is, what are they doing and what's the impact? And is that group of people that I care about moving in the way that I expected to move and I wanted to move in the direction I'm moving, and so forth. So identity-wise, I've put here a few things, but Elad, feel free to kind of add your thoughts and additions. We're talking about basically which accounts, so it's pretty basic, but we still see a lot of companies doing B2B not looking at this data, not looking at those insights. Which personas, a bit more tricky, but we'll give a few tips on how we can overcome these privacy issues of who from the company is there, right? That's always the big complaint we hear about ABM. Great, you told me somebody from this company is visiting, but if I don't know who they are, this isn't really helping me. I need to get some higher resolution. And then, of course, things that, again, are maybe a bit more of the general traffic metrics like geos, sources, campaigns, referrals, and so forth. Anything else regarding identity that you recommend looking at?
Yeah, I think that one of the quick wins that we can do is assuming we are running paid campaigns that are targeted, right? Let's say I'm running a paid campaign on LinkedIn, which I know all of the accounts that I'm now assuming I targeted based on accounts, and maybe I targeted even based on titles. I can now use this UTM that sending people from this specific campaign to my website and immediately deduce that everyone that's visiting my website from using this specific UTM, I can segment them and immediately say those are, for example, CFOs from my tier 1 accounts, or those are CFOs from retail companies, as let's assume I target them, right? Because I have this information in LinkedIn, I know who am I targeting, so now everyone visiting my website from there, I already know who they are without an external tool. I don't need anything else. And marketers, if we as marketers have something in terms of like our budget, it's usually paid. So you can get a multiplier on your paid campaigns. You can use that later on to understand also what those people from these specific campaigns are doing on your website, even if you didn't get any immediate conversion, right? Because if we measure campaign success, how do we measure campaign success? Usually we say, okay, who are people from this specific campaign that actually bought something, right? Or at the minimum created a pipeline, created a deal, right? But sometimes it's long sales cycle. We can't really see if this campaign is actually a success because they're not going to convert right now. They might convert in 2 months, right? So am I waiting 2 months to see if this campaign is a success? No, I can actually segment those specific people and understand what they are doing. And the nice thing is that we get the GA4 cookie. So even the next time they're going to visit, I can immediately understand who they are, which personas. I can even tie that back to the initial campaign. And we'll talk about attribution later, but that's something that also you can do in GA4 in general.
And I think there's a big discussion today in the B2B ecosystem about buying group marketing, right? The transition from account level to buying group. And so identifying personas within the buying group is becoming critical. And so now if that is something that we need to uncover, then, of course, that we, like you said, we have this ability to look at traffic sources or campaigns as an identification signal that we can then use. And we also have our website content, right? We can look at website behavior. We can look at specific areas that they engaged with as an indicator that can place them in a certain bucket. And it doesn't need to be perfect, but it's already there. It's your first party data. You don't need anything else to do this more advanced segmentation. It's just about defining it and understanding how to place it. Once it's there, you can start tracking those audiences, like I said, over time, multiple sessions, and start building that picture of what's happening.
Yeah,
Let's talk about
I
impact
think
also. So let's talk about what's worth kind of. Let's say we have the segmentation, we have the audiences, maybe we even have account data. We got that. What next? What do you recommend are maybe the first things to note when it comes to measuring impact?
yeah. So as I mentioned before, like when you do a campaign, let's define a campaign. You do something, okay? It can be some initiative that you launch on your website, some new page. It can be like a paid campaign, a content campaign, something, right? And you want to understand if it's working or not. And you want to understand what can you optimize in this specific campaign or anywhere else on the website, right? You want to start understanding in the different awareness stages of people based on the different content on your website. Where are you missing the mark? What can you do better? What's working and what can you do better? So I'll give you one example. We have a client which created a really nice and really invested a lot in creating this ROI calculator on their website, right? Like really, and in terms of the logic, in terms of the flow, in terms of the design, everything. And initially we launched this as a gated ROI calculator. So you put in the initial details, and if you want to get the actual ROI, you put your email, you get all of the information, the breakdown, how it works, yada, yada, yada. But we noticed that people aren't converting. People aren't putting their emails. And we decided, but we did have analytics, and we actually had training on there, and we can actually see the accounts. And since they were focusing on ABM, they were practicing ABM, so we could see the accounts are there, but now they are not doing anything. So instead of trying to force them to put their email, we understood, okay, if we know those accounts are there, we actually want them to see this data. Even if we don't get their email, we can reach out to them elsewhere, right? We can reach out to them on LinkedIn. We already have their emails probably. It's easier now to get people's details. But if they will be more engaged and they'll understand the value that the client can give them, that you can give them, then it's much better than having them bounce. So what we did is we removed this gate, and immediately those targeted accounts started engaging. And when they started engaging, they started to understand the actual ROI. And when they understood the ROI, it really helped immediately in terms of the sales cycle, because people, they were educated more when speaking with the AE, with the account executives. So in terms of the impact, once we know who is in front of us, we can change and what they're doing on the website. We can then test, we can change, we can experiment with different aspects on the website. So you can take this and apply this on different campaigns, paid campaigns, on-page initiatives, even your product pages, right? If you see that people aren't engaging with your product pages, and you know who they are because we did it previously, right? When we identify them as being in our buying group, so now we can iterate and have more educated implementations on our website, on our marketing campaigns. So I think
So,
that's the big impact that you can get now.
and so you're saying something, but also correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's even deeper that this investment in better analytics helped create a better user experience, which created better business outcome, right? Because it allowed you to drop those gates and also transition, which is a completely full topic. We can also talk about ours, a transition from lead-based metrics to account-based metrics and engagement. But if we now put the spotlight on generating pipeline and revenue, not generating leads, not just capturing emails, but creating better experiences for our accounts as a business outcome that we can show correlates to generating more revenue, then if that is the purpose, then we need to put in place the right way to measure it, right, and to leverage it. So I think those are things that marketers are trying to see are tied in together. Why spend those? Why spend this
Mhm.
money and time on these things? It will also, just by doing that, can help you create better experiences on your site. So make your site even more effective.
Yeah, and this takes me, directly to the start of our conversation, because if you know what you're trying to do for this, for the example I just gave, it's like they weren't trying to get more leads. They were trying to score more deals with those specific accounts. So why even bother gating that, right? And if we weren't measuring that, if we weren't looking on those specific accounts, we wouldn't be able to understand, okay, which accounts are actually engaged. And I think this is where it actually begins, is understanding what do you want your website to do? What's the goal? What are you trying to measure? And based on that, implement your analytics and review those reports.
Awesome. And so on that note, I know we're just at time. Wanted to share some steps again, depending. This is something we did last webinar. I think it was really successful in trying to putting a framework that helps marketers evaluate what they should do based on where they are. Um, so when we talk about those different stages, the first gear, like you shared, is really just proper segmentation and audience building on your existing Google Analytics or any web analytics tool, defining those different audiences that you care about. Right, you would recommend it based on UTMs, based on behavior.
Yeah, and I'll even make it easier for our audience here. We have a very like a very step-by-step how to on our website. It's called like GA4 cohorts. We'll send it after the webinar as well. It's like the different segments that will start with how to do it in GA4, like step-by-step, very easy guide that you can follow. It even have like recommendations for B2B companies and what type of segments they should start with. So very, very easy and intuitive.
The next level really is account level de-anonymization. And here there's no real excuses because a lot of affordable tech is here. Even Trendemon in partnership with Airfleet. So any Airfleet customer can get access to account level de-anonymization. HubSpot is offering this as well. So there really isn't much of an excuse of why not to understand which accounts are in front of you. What other recommendations or thoughts you would have on that kind of second stage? What are the other things that you would recommend looking at here?
Yeah, so of course there are a few tools doing up person level de-anonymization, but also I would say that what I mentioned before, using like the LinkedIn UTMs and stuff like that, it's basically de-anonymization of the traffic without any external tool. But really, the tools today are so affordable. I don't see any reason why not to. This information is really invaluable for it's you can't actually do B2B marketing without understanding who are those accounts. If I'm selling to big enterprises, I couldn't care less than of all of the small SMBs that are visiting my website. It doesn't help me to do my job better. So I really need to understand who is this account, who is in front of me. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would just say go in and implement a tool,
Mhm.
ideally
One
Trendemon.
Once more. Yeah, plugin. Very, very soft plugin. Appreciate it. But I think one thing that could help just from a tip perspective, have your sales look at some of this data. If they get excited about this type of approach, you'll have another champion kind of in the company, in the organization, rooting for this approach. So you're not having to do this all by yourself. We've seen that tons of time. You show this insight to an account executive, you show them this data, they get excited and they say, okay, this is going to really affect how I'm going to prioritize what I'm going to do. Last part, and just so we be respectful of time, really is getting deep into connecting website to revenue and to outcomes. This is really taking it to that last mile of showing the journey down to revenue creation, down to pipeline generation, all of those things. And being able to stand in front of your CFO and saying, look, this is what we did. This is what actually happened. And this is why we want to move in this direction rather than that direction. Um, any other third gear suggestions do you have?
No,
More
I think
advanced?
that this is where you know you succeeded. If the CFOs are asking you for the report to see your report, so then you know you did something right? If you can actually show them like the connection between the revenue to what you're doing, that's where you want to be.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're at time. We just wanted to mention that Airfleet has a really amazing offer for our audience members. Ella, do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, for sure. So anyone following this webinar that will reach out to me, I'll send a link after this webinar as well. You can reach out to me for a 30-minute free consultation about your specific use case and how you can actually use Google Analytics to just do your job better. What should you track? What should you do? And if you already are very experienced with Google Analytics, so we can take it to the next level and see how we can actually implement some more de-anonymization tools and do a lot more from your website in general. Yeah, and I think that everyone that will actually become a client of ours, you also get from Trendymon all of the analytics and the anonymization tools for free just by working with us. So this is also part of this mutual work together and collaboration. And this is specifically for people following this webinar. So you just make sure that you mention that you came from this webinar, and we'll be more than happy to get you started on your journey in analytics for more revenue and pipeline.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better. And Be Smart work with a lot. He's doing amazing websites. Him and his team are doing some great work, which starts with getting the right metrics in mind and in place, using the right tech. Fantastic partner of ours. Really happy. And also wanted to thank you for making the time to join us. I know we're at time, so we'll zoom through it, but really wanted to thank you for this really great conversation and the preparation for this, which was for me also kind of really pleasant and insightful. So thank you for that. Yeah, and looking forward to seeing you and doing more like this, more events and webinars like this.
Great stuff. Yeah, thank you, Avishai, for inviting me, and thank you for all of your team at Trendymon doing this awesome job. Really amazing stuff there.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
day. Bye bye.